Welcome back. It is episode 119. I'm your host, Jacob Harris, and this podcast is brought to you by Achievement Apex and Power Pit Rockingham. Today I'm joined by Allen Mao. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time. I think we spoke, that's been 2 years ago.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah, but we got here in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's hard to know where to start with you because there's actually a fair bit I don't know. I'd guess for me, the main question is knowing that you have such an involvement in bodybuilding as a bodybuilding coach and doing bodybuilding yourself. Where did your interest with bodybuilding start? Where did your journey with it start personally?
Yeah, so for myself, I actually started going to the gym, start lifting weights so when I first moved to Australia, so I came here to study, and I was playing basketball, and I was playing some local league, and obviously, you can tell I'm way too short to be competitive. I was way too skinny, right? And that's kind of like how I got into the gym. And then as soon as I got into the gym, I, never looked back and, chasing the progressions. I was kind of like strong with the certain lifts and got strong pretty quick. And then, it was back then, it was like, and I started buying magazines and things like that, because I'm like very, when I get into certain things, I get really obsessed, and then, it was just bodybuilding, and there was everything to me. And then I was spending more time in the gym than when I was at uni. So, so from there, I competed for the first time in 2013, and then just pretty much every 2 years since then. And then I started coaching. I actually started out helping friends, and obviously because I have my own interest in, how to get into the, get bigger or get leaner or trying to get into a contest competition and things like that. Did a lot of research myself and started helping friends, and obviously learned a lot from a lot of people as well back in the day. And obviously there was like before, I would say Instagram probably just started out back then maybe. So a lot of information that you get with, like, obviously from Google, but a lot of from magazine and stuff like that, right? So a lot of like I wouldn't say incorrect, but like weird information. But obviously back then I was like, okay, this must be the way you do it. And then you start. I'm sure you probably. How old are you?
I'm 27. So like for me, I kind of like, even I guess before Instagram, there was like a lot of. Is it like even just bodybuilding.com? They had the forums.
Yeah,
and stuff.
bodybuilding.com.
There's a lot of bad stuff on there.
Like Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness and things like that. I would just buy those like every month, right? And then that's when I started figuring out, okay, cool, like, this doesn't seem right, or like, how come I do this and I don't look like Ronnie Coleman, and it did their routine and things like that, why don't I look like that, right? And over time, that's kind of how I developed my own interest in like researching all this sort of stuff. And then, and I was very, very fortunate in 2015. I got a was very lucky to get a position to sort of start coaching online. I don't know if you heard of this company, Flex Success. They actually coach a lot of people.
No, I haven't. No.
Dean McCullough. He's
yes,
so that's his company, right? So Dean and I go way back. So we both used to work in for the same company, a nutrition warehouse. And him and his wife Lizzie, they started the coaching business, Flex Success. And then in 2015, I got on board. I think not long after they started. And so I was given the opportunity to start coaching people, right? And I was doing that part-time, and then from 2017, while I was still at uni, I was doing my master's, and then...
So what did you get your master's in, sorry?
In finance, actually.
In finance?
Then I was just talking to her about it. I'm not doing anything with that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it probably helps somewhat to running a business, maybe personally, finance.
Well, obviously, I'm very, very terrible at running a business. So, yes, I guess. But obviously, I did that because I thought that's, what I needed to do, like much like a lot of the Asians, very typical. So I think it was 2017, I decided, what, I'll give it a crack and slowly transition into doing that full time. And then, it was like just after COVID, I decided to do everything on my own. And so it's been pretty cool since,
Yeah, so it must have been, obviously you've been around then a lot of bodybuilders, and if you competed back in 2013, the coaches then were probably, it's been 10 years, right? You would have seen coaches come and go a little bit. You would have seen people before they were who they are now.
Yeah. It's very different, I would say that. And I get asked this question a lot, even like, even guys like Jesse and things like, a lot of younger guys that competed a few times, they want to obviously get into coaching, right? Which I get, obviously, it seems like a job that, you just go and lift weights and then you coach people and you make money, right? But I think it's like, it's not as easy as people think, especially nowadays, when you're trying to be an online coach, because people ask me a lot, how did you get into it? And honestly, like I was like, as I said again, I'm terrible with business, right? I don't post any content and things like that, like, which obviously is not the way you do things. But I was just very, very fortunate. I was very, very lucky to be given this opportunity to coach and, across many different demographics. I think that's kind of like where I honed a lot of my skills and over the years, and sort of, I guess, slowly transition into a little bit more specific though. So now probably still, I still coach a lot of gym pop, but now probably, a little bit more specific into like, bodybuilding preps and things like that off season or on season. But yeah, so, I would say, what about yourself? Like, how do you find it, like, coaching people now? Is that different from obviously, when you first started up back then?
Yeah, it's different because I worked for companies where they kind of did it. So like you said, right? It's like when you go to online coaching, it's harder than you think, right? I worked for like a company that ran classes and I just did the class. Yeah. So I learned a lot from working with Gen Pop. I remember like probably third or fourth session I ever did is a woman who was like 8 months pregnant. Yeah. She couldn't do anything standing. She just sat down. All we could really do was arms. Yeah. Couldn't do too much overhead stuff. So I got challenged a lot to start with, but that didn't necessarily mean that I was doing what I wanted to do, but it was good. I personally think that a lot of coaches, me personally, I will always find how I started very valuable because I was thrown in the deep end training, basically the worst I possibly could. People with double shoulder reconstructions, every limitation you could possibly have. I had less equipment. I worked in a gym that had like no machines, just had like
so
dumbbells.
You got to think outside the box and
and so it's definitely different to now where I can go to a facility now. I can think I'm off my feet, but I don't because as you know, you don't do that once you're better at it, right? Obviously you have things planned more, and so it's definitely different. I would say the drive is the biggest difference. Like you need to wake up in the morning and think like, all right, like I own a business. I need to give my clients for a start, to give the current clients the best that I can. Yeah. But I also need to keep moving to get more clients. Yeah. So when you're doing classes, I think if you do them for too long, you can get lost in it. I think if you do F45 or whatever, it's like there's no drive there, right? Yeah. You don't even really have to do your job that well. As long as
it'd be hard for you to develop your own identity, right? Which I know, like obviously it's tough as well. Trying to when you get paid a specific amount every week and then trying to go on your own, pretty much starting from zero, which is hard, But like what you just said before, I think coaching with coaching a lot of general populations, I think that's really, really important for me and also really helped me develop a lot of skill because, like you said, your first client was a 8-month-old pregnant lady, right? So their approach, like when you're trying to help them, whether it's through nutritional training, sort of lifestyle interventions and things like that, it's got to be very, very, very different to, say, someone that's like super strict bodybuilder who does everything like exactly you said. So that means what? You got to really think, okay, cool, let's try this, let's try that. Maybe this doesn't work, we try that, depending on your lifestyle. Okay, this happens in your life. Okay, cool, now we need to make those adjustments. So I'll always encourage people and especially, I guess a lot of clients will ask me, okay, cool, how to build my business, how to think that. I said, go work with a variety of different people across different demographics and help them achieve results. And then over time, then you can build up your skill set, your toolbox, and then you can then coach more specific to what you want. And because also coaching those people will also help you, obviously, develop your skill, but also help you build your brain as well, right? Because those are the people because the reality is that, say, now coaching with bodybuilders and things like that, it can be very seasonal. They might stay with you for like off season and then the on season, or sometimes some people just come to you for 20 weeks prep or 16 weeks or whatever, right? And then they go on and do their own thing. Whereas I'm sure you have many, many clients that you develop actual friendship through that. And now probably they coach with you for many, many years, right? And then just enjoy you helping them, changing their physique, changing their lifestyle, making them feel better and things like that. And I think that's really, really important for I think any new coaches, trying to crack into the industry, as opposed to trying to I just want to coach 20 jacked bodybuilders, which obviously it would be awesome, right? But in reality, you probably need to actually develop those skills, working with variety of different people, different demographics, develop your skills, build your brain, and also build like a lot of friendship through that, right? And then let's say if they know someone, hey, they want to do a bodybuilding prep or whatever, and they'll come to you, right? It's like, I guess that's when we had our first conversation, right? Because of Jesse, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, So obviously, he and I are really good friends. We have really good friendships through the preps and things like that. So I guess that's a good example, So that would really help you then to not only acquire more clients, but also help you develop that skill, I think.
Yeah, we're talking to Richard. That's what we spoke about retention, right? Because that's really what outlines your coaching ability and reputation to an extent. If you just had everyone coming in, prep, see you later, the question would arise like, well, why don't they stay with you if they're continuing bodybuilding? You know what I mean? So the fact that you're training people for years is really where it comes in to be like, well, that's when you know someone's a good coach, that someone stayed with you for that long a period of time, because we've also both trained Gen Pop people. Yeah. Sometimes that can be hard. Yeah. All it takes is 100%. For a couple of bills to come in for them, or maybe they have a week where they're unmotivated and it's like, oh, hey, I think maybe I don't want to keep coaching or whatever. And so I always give people that space. Hey, look, if that's what you feel like, fair enough. I outline I think maybe this could just be a period of time that you're thinking this way. Yeah. Oh, I feel like I need to drop this, and because it can be a mental thing. And recently I just did that. And then I gave this person their space. They then came back to me and said, oh, you know what? Yeah, no, I was in a bad mindset the other day.
And they always come back, right?
They come back, right?
Yeah, because they had a good experience with you. I guess that's like the word of mouth is always, especially in this coaching space, I think, obviously, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be able to give results, right? Doesn't matter how nice you are. You can beg, but people don't pay you for friendship, right? They actually pay you for your skill set and your ability to help them achieve results. But I think it's very important. And I always have this saying, this kind of what stuck with me when I first started out coaching, is that I can't even remember where I heard it, but people don't care what you know unless they know that you care. And I always stuck with that. Maybe that's kind of my thing with my coaching. And so I found, at least for myself anyway, obviously I'm sure many different people have different way of approaching things, but at least for me, it's cool. Obviously, I would love to help this person get a result, but in the process, I would love to develop some sort of friendship as well, showing at least that I care. Not just spitting out a whole bunch of information, because sometimes you can have someone that's super smart, but doesn't really have a people skill, where then you can't really retain their clients, right? Because it especially doesn't matter if you're working with Gen Pop or bodybuilders, right? People have emotions, right? You go through stuff, in prep or in day-to-day life, go through breakups, works, situations or whatever. And in that kind of situations, how do you comfort this person? How do you help this person to manage those emotions, but also able to do what you want them to do, or even, pivot and come up with different strategies to help them get through this period, so that way they can be in a better place mentally and physically, so they can keep going, right? So I think, and I'm sure you definitely felt that too with your clients,
Yeah, well, it's about, we're human at the end of the day, right? So treating people like numbers and stuff, it's never going to work. That's why sales is obviously not a strong suit of yours, isn't one of mine. I think that's, to me, there is no sale for me. It's always let's get you started, stay with me for, for 4 to however many weeks. Obviously, usually it's a lot more efficient if they're with you for a longer period of time. But just say, hey, look, 4 weeks with me and see how you feel. You know what I mean? I feel like that will sell you on it. I don't need to sit here and try to sell you, because, like you said, the coaching and the relationship between us and how much I do care and how much we're working together is what's going to sell you. I don't need to sell you on it, because my service will be good enough that will sell you. And then we can move on, focus on what we're doing here, and the money can be in the background, because it's definitely, for me, I've always had a second job, because I've never I've done this as a full-time job, but I personally didn't like it, because I never want to rely on it as an income. Because it can, I think that's for some people, like you said, people go, all right, I want to coach. I've seen people quit jobs, good jobs, quit like FIFO or something, go to coaching, and then they can't help but become about money because it becomes their sole income.
Yeah.
So it can be a difficult with yourself. You've obviously got a decent amount of pretty steady clients, right? Because I see you posting from competitions and you travel for them and things like that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the like recent ones that you've done? Because just recently, the photo I actually used for this podcast, that was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that was 2 weeks ago. It was in Orlando, so that was for Mr. Olympia.
The actual, the Mr. Olympia, the big one.
Yeah. So I had a client in men's physique. His Instagram name is Daddy. So I was like, hey, his actual name is Jay, but like, you know, a lot of other people just refer to him as Daddy, which is weird. I'm not gonna say call him Daddy. But yeah, so he competed in men's physique, so that was actually pretty cool. So because I think we worked together for just over a year in 2022, and then he got his pro car, and then just after his pro car, he did a show 2 weeks later, and he won his pro show, and then pretty much qualified for the Olympia. Yeah.
Wow. And how did he do at the Olympia?
He did really good. Like, I mean, you know, like obviously we understood because he was pretty much like a new pro, right? So we know there's a gaps because when you have like 46 of the best athletes in the world, you know, and especially those majority of those have been competing at that level for a long time, there's a gap. I think not just the physique itself, there's a gap, but also there is I believe there's a commercial side to it as well, the business side to that as well. So I think he just needs to compete a little bit more, obviously, actually improve his physique to that level of standards, and obviously that, you know, build his brand like through the process as well. So I think, you know, like obviously our goal is to get back there next year. So yeah, so we'll get back to work. But yeah, he did good. He did really good. He made some really awesome progress, which everything that we wanted to do, he's done that. Yeah, but you know, we weren't expecting like, oh, he's gonna be in the first call or second call or anything like that, because those people are pretty much like set anyway. Those are guys has been there for a long time.
First time there as well. It's just an achievement in itself, right?
Yeah. It's like it's so hard to even get there as well. So
is this your first client you've had there?
Yeah.
Wow.
So actually, it's quite interesting. You know how I was saying D McKillop? So we started coaching. He started coaching company and got me on board in 2015, and he had his first client in Olympia, and I had my first client in Olympia, and we were both at Orlando. So it was pretty cool. It's like a kind of like full circle moment for me. Like, you know, we both got there, and you know, I guess as a bodybuilding coach, it's probably like, you know, one of your goals is to be able to help a client to get to that level, and to be able to do that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's that pinnacle, right? It's like the big time.
Yeah.
So it must have been, you know, great. Did you? So I always see videos, and I've never been. I've seen, I always see videos and photos and stuff. So they have like what's like the thing I'm thinking of? It's like at the Olympia, and they have like, you know, where everyone's got desks and you can walk around and.
Like a mid Olympian and things like that.
Yeah, where you can like, you know, you'll see people walk around taking photos of the bigger bodybuilders. And Rich Piana and stuff used to go to them, and
like the expo.
The expo is what I'm thinking. Did you go to that while you were there?
We did for a little bit, but it was obviously, you know, we had to stick to the schedule and do stuff. So I didn't get too much time to like walk around and do other stuff. But definitely obviously met some top level athletes and things like that. It was pretty cool. Yeah, very good experience just to see, like, you know, I guess, to see the best of the best doing, you know, what they do, and just being in the environment, I think is like pretty cool.
Oh yeah, would have been to be in the same room as that many people at that high level would have been. I mean, for me, or like, you know, even Jesse, we used to talk a lot about like YouTube and stuff, obviously, because in Australia that's where we see a lot of it, right? It's like that's where we see a lot of the stuff. For me to even think about being there one day is crazy. So the fact that you got to go there, then also you're excited you have a client there, and it won't be the last time. I'm assuming the plan is
hopefully
to go there again.
Hopefully.
So what do you, in terms, we mentioned this before, you had like some of your own bodybuilding goals at one point.
Yeah.
And you competed in 2013. Did you compete again after that?
Yeah, so I didn't, so it was IMBA back then. So IMBA, so that was when I was in Brisbane. So 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2019 was the last time I competed. Yeah.
And so the plan is to?
I'm not sure. Like, you know, like we were just kind of talking about earlier, like, you know, I guess, like, you know, I think I'm okay at bodybuilding. I think from a genetic standpoint, but, you know, I probably not at the level that, you know, a lot of the guys are. So I've always understood that, like, it's not that I don't believe myself. Like, it's like, you know, because it's really hard to separate, like, you know, being delusional and also having the self-belief, right? It's like some people can say, oh, I want to do this. You know, it's like me saying, oh, I want to be playing the NBA. But as much as I can work as hard as I can and have, you know, self-belief to do all that sort of stuff, the reality is the chance is probably, you know, pretty slim, right? Now, so with bodybuilding, it's like kind of not like, I think I can be okay at a certain level, but it was never my goal to be like, oh, I'm going to be a pro bodybuilder or whatever, right? And it's kind of, that's when I got into coaching and I developed more interest in that. But I have believed in myself as far as like my ability to, like, you know, in the gym or whatever I got to do to achieve a certain look for my physique. I can work hard and, you know, do everything that I needed to do, but I know there's a limitation to that. So that's where I kind of had to make a decision. Like, okay, cool, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the business side of things than that. Obviously, like, whether I'm trying to compete or not, I always train the same. You know, I always, just because I love training, and that's what got me into in the first place. So I would love to compete again, just more so for myself, and hopefully my son can see that as well. You know, I think it'd be pretty cool to have my son be able to see that's what his dad does, you know, all these years, and also that's what I do for work, right? Yeah, but, you know, I would say that would be my personal goal, but whatever that leads, you know, I don't have like an expectation of, oh, I have to, you know, like, I think a lot of guys these days, obviously, you know, their goal is to pursue a pro car, you know, in IBP Pro, and obviously to compete in a pro show, which I think that's awesome, because obviously I have a lot of clients that's what we are working towards, right? I guess it's different for myself, because also I see what these guys are, what their genetics are, and what they're able to do, and I'm able to assess my own physique. And obviously, being a coach as well, right? You gotta have the ability to, like, assess a client's physique. So, and also be very, very honest with it, and also, you know, set goals, and but also, like, for myself, so I could understand, okay, cool, well, I'm probably never gonna get there. Based on my genetics, I can get to a certain level, but I'm probably not as good as these guys because of these genetic factors. Now, it's not an excuse for me to, like, not train hard or whatever, but I just, you know, I can, I guess, objectively assess my own physique and align my goals with that, if it makes sense. If it makes sense, yeah.
It does. I'd like to explore the genetic side of things a little bit, because that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
He just wants to be hydrated. Well, a quick side note, we'll have a thirst trap, because Alan's never tried one and he wants to get some hydration in.
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
I just got some filter installed at home. So.
Is this as good as the filter?
Pretty close, I'll say. Because that filter costs a lot of money, so I gotta say it tastes good.
Yeah, of course. Shout out to Thirst Trap, as always.
Yeah.
I want to go into the genetics, but I want to quickly, before we do that, talk about your training, because your training is what it made me go like, hang on a second. And this was back when we were going to talk originally. I spoke to Wright Sagar at one point, and we talked before about how you guys train together a bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you kind of like to have a little bit of friendly competition, I've seen.
Well, I'm always lose. I always lose.
But you like to try.
Yeah, of course.
Because there was a point where I think when I first looked at it, you were pursuing some deadlift goals.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the heaviest you ever did, but what body weight do you typically sit around?
Anywhere from 95 to 98.
Yeah, and you never really go over 100?
I have, yeah. So I when I'm, like, you know, pushing hard and with food and everything like that, and then trying to, you know, grow, I would say. But probably, I think the heaviest I got up to is probably 104, 105, but it was, like, really uncomfortable. I think I lift the best probably around, like, 96 or so, 96 to 98, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, the most I saw was, like, you did a set of 4 with 310.
Yes,
is that right?
So that was probably October last year. Yeah, probably this time last year, actually.
And that was conventional deadlift.
Yeah.
You strapped?
Yeah, straps. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
nuts to me is crazy.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know if you know a lot of powerlifters, but I mean,
You've seen some crazy lifts, right? Surely.
I've seen some crazy lifts. But for me, I get more impressed sometimes when someone's not really doing it right, because it's not like you're not trying, but you're not trying to be a powerlifter specifically either.
Yeah.
So Jake's another good example. I just spoke to Jake.
Oh, he's super strong. Yeah, he's super
It's a
strong.
similar example though. It's just like he's a bodybuilder. He's got no real business trying to lift that heavy, but similar to yourself, is willing to train at such high intensities, because you haven't just done that, right? I know you did, like, that was the heaviest you did from what I remember.
Yeah, so for 4, and then I think it was a month after that I pulled 340.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for a single, yeah.
And that was just to test it, because you were kind of...
Yeah, that was with rate actually, because we weren't actually planning on doing that day. It was meant to be like 300 for like reps or something, and then I guess we just got lazy and now, you know what, just see how it goes, and then just put out 340.
Yeah. Well, because on the build up, I saw you doing a lot of reps. Like, you were doing quite a few at like 280 and stuff, right? Were you doing like sets of 7 and 8 and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I got 280 for 8. So I was always, the program I always do, like, say, a couple of sets of like 6 to 8 reps, maybe sometimes 4. So that's where I sit majority of the time, and sometimes for ego reasons, you know, just obviously, you know, you understand that you go program and, you know, try to do something heavy.
Yeah.
That's when I would go a little bit heavier, you know, if I feel good on the day. But for the most part, I would do like 6 to 8 reps, but I don't actually do combinational deadlift that much. I'll typically do, like, especially when I'm trying to like bodybuild. I'll usually do like stiff leg deadlift, or like offer deficit, or like pause Romanian deadlift, or things like that. That will be where my majority of my training sits, and then every now and then, you know, I want to see where I'm at and lift something, and then for the ego, and then I'll jump in and do conventional. Yeah.
With Romanians, like that kind of, now you sort of see it more, right? It's like pretty much like, it's like the bodybuilding way to go, right? You can do conventional deadlifts, people do, but it seems like Romanians like you want, you know, hamstrings and an ass and a back.
Yeah.
Romanians seem to be the go-to.
Yeah.
And so what's the heaviest you went with them?
So with good technique, it was 250 for like 6 or 8 or something. I can't remember.
Okay.
Maybe it was 6, yeah.
And so you use straps and a belt?
Straps and a belt, yeah.
Do you have any, this might be a time, I mean, I'm going to be cheeky and kind of get this advice for myself, but people listening are probably thinking the same thing. When I find on RDL, especially when you start to get really heavy, it starts to feel like you're getting folded in half, right?
Yeah.
What would be like, you know, maybe even just 2 of your major cues for, like, you know, passing that point of I'm sure you have a number where it gets heavy. Maybe it's 200 kilos or something. For me, it's like between 120 and 140 is where it starts to feel like that. What are cues that you really, I guess, they're in your head, or you would give to a client when it comes to like pushing through those hard sets to try to get through it, even though you might feel like you're just going to collapse?
Yeah. So I would say probably one thing that I see that happens a lot is a lot of people do Romanian kind of like a stiff leg instead of a Romanian. I mean, the way I would differentiate the two is that if I want to have a little bit more hinge, like a glute focus, obviously I'll keep, for Romanian, I'll keep my knees as soft as possible. So I don't purposely lock my knees. I'll push my hips back as much as possible. So my hips starting here, I want to see my hips push all the way back. That's the distance. That's how much bend I'll use for my knee in order to achieve that range. Whereas for stiff leg, obviously I'll lock my knees out as much as possible without feeling like I'm tearing my hamstrings. That's obviously a lot less use of like glutes, and a lot more obviously just because the angle changes, right? So I would say what I see majority of people start folding and stuff is because they do the Romanian, but it's almost like they're doing a stiff leg. So they're not actually using the hips and pushing their glutes back.
Yeah.
So you end up feeling more tension on your lower back.
Keeping the hips too high.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then obviously that's also depending on your structure, right? Your femur in relation to your torso, how the degree that you bend and things like that, your tibia and things like that. So, so how much you bend, obviously that's depending on you as a genetically unique individual. But I'll say, definitely don't try to lock the knees out, keep the knees soft, push hips back as much as possible. Then usually, and also, sorry, I would say another thing is I probably see people try to force their chest up too much or get too much thoracic extension. That's what I see, because obviously if you can maintain like a neutral spine and actually depressing down on your scapula to engage your lats, you can probably lock into a better position, and you can actually brace better, and you probably notice that your ability to hinge will be a lot better too, and also you won't feel those folding again, because it's like the weight is pulling you down, but if you like get that massive extension through the top, at some point you're gonna start fold before your hips even move. Does it make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying like, would you still look forward? Or do you
I would say, I mean, this is how I cue clients anyway. It doesn't matter whatever point that you feel more comfortable. Just try not to like purposely, because obviously chest up is kind of like the cue that we learned, with squats and deadlift. But I found that most of the time for people, forcing their chest up will end up like extending your thoracic spine too much. Then for most people, you probably find it really hard to actually squat down to depth, or like when you're lifting or pulling heavy weights, it's actually really hard to then lock into that position. So by just not worry about forcing your chest up, bracing as hard as you can, pushing against the belt, or if you're not pushing against the belt, just pressing down, even like slightly pull your rib cage down a little bit, and then move your hips as far back as you can. I think you'll notice that you probably see a lot less folding happening.
But just encouraging a little bit more of that knee bend as well. Like you said, depends on the situation, but because I think I know I've had issues in the past with that, and then I obviously followed a lot of people, and you learn yourself as a coach as well. So you know what I mean. Like you start to with clients. It's frustratingly enough sometimes with clients it's easier because you can look at them and you can fix things. But when it's yourself, sometimes you just have days where you're like, how do I teach this? I can't even get it myself. It can be frustrating, but. No, that's a good. I agree with a lot of those cues. It's big. The look forward thing or chest up is massive. Yeah, and it's hard because there is people out there that are very experienced and stronger than me and they will use it as a cue, and there's nothing wrong with that because it probably works for people as well. But for me personally, maybe it's just the way I'm built. But if I do try to look up exactly what you've just said is what happens for me. I almost find that I just kind of let my eyes follow my body. Yeah, and that's a lot more comfortable. Yeah. So I guess for me now I'm expecting that when I'm in the gym now I'm going to RDL 200 from all that advice.
Try that.
Yeah. You've given me that advice, so I'm going to do it now. I have to also comment on your squat, because your squat was also. I remember I think you do more safety bar stuff from what I saw. Yeah. So you were doing like 250 for like 5. Maybe?
No, not that much.
Not that much?
It was I think the most was 230 for 9 or something.
230 for 9?
Yeah.
That's almost more impressive than 250 for 5 anyway.
No, but I never got over 230. I really wanted 240 for like 6, but I never actually got there. So
just because the strength wasn't there, or you just didn't get there?
I just didn't try. I mean, well, obviously, then because I was in hands through that period of time, and then
Do you like the safety bar? Like, is there a reason you didn't use the barbell? Or do you just prefer it because you don't have to?
This is actually a very good question, actually. So, I actually used to be very, very attached to I still do like the squat, bench, and deadlift, right? And even for like bodybuilding training and stuff. I guess it's from my own experience, but also because when you get good at those lifts, like when you see squat, bench, and deadlift get stronger, you kind of feel like, I mean, at least for a period of time, I thought that's the way to get big, right? Which obviously we know that's not. So when it comes to like movement selections, right, I guess for like a hypertrophy training or sort of stuff, I would say, because think about it, for a bodybuilder to execute a perfect squat with the barbell, the amount of time you do to actually spend warming up on your shoulder to even get under the bar, that itself is like, it'll take you 30 minutes, right? Because obviously you do so much pulling, obviously the muscle size itself and also the pushing and pulling that you do. So majority of bodybuilders probably don't have enough mobility to actually set the bar in the correct position, right? So then what end up happening is you get this massive extension through your flexing your wrist, and then I'm sure you see bodybuilders do that, right? Where they put their like fingers around the bar and do that.
Looks horrible, yeah.
Yeah, because then what's end up happening? Then you end up like really forcing your chest up. Then again, the too much thoracic extension, too much lumbar extension. Then you rather than working on your quads, you spend so much time actually working on your lower back, because you go the whole squat sessions, you feel more on your lower back than actually your quads. Whereas if you get a safety spot or a hack squat, well, let's use safety bar for as an example. You don't have to worry about that. You just actually can set into correct position. You brace down, and actually, if anything, the load is probably more in line with the same with your. Actually, can allow you to achieve more knee flexions because it's a little bit more upright, right? It's almost like a really high bar.
More like a high bar,
yeah. Or it was almost like a front squat position, but where the bar sits. So by then, you can actually not only get into a better position, you don't have to worry about your shoulder mobility. You can brace better. Your hip position's better, your rib cage position's better, you can brace better, and obviously you can achieve a much more consistent form, and also you can actually better knee flexion. So I think if I was to pick the two, for most of you, I would say if you have access to a good safety bar, there will be a so much better option. And if you decided to one day to go back to barbell squat, if you get really, really strong on safety spot, you can transfer that back easily as long as you can get into that correct position. So.
Yeah, I mean, generally used. I see it. I've used it as well as an accessory. Even if you are high bar squatting, some people will use it to. Maybe you want to do squats twice a week and do a pause squat after you deadlift. Not everyone wants to twice a week high bar, so a safety bar can be a good option. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you brought those things up. I still don't want to. Genetics is there on the back burner. We are going to talk about that. But hack squats you mentioned.
Yeah.
I recently started. Tim's got a pendulum squat. So I've started using that.
They'll probably be the best for if you want to focus on more on quads.
Yeah. So this is what I want to, I guess, delve into a little bit because I brought this up recently about optimal training becoming more popular now, right? More biomechanics, based stuff. We're seeing less straight bar lat pull downs and more like incline bench. Taking up half the cable machine, doing one arm. There's a lot more. You know what I'm getting at. And not that I'm making fun of it, but it is funny because it is. So, obviously, as you said, right, squat, bench, and deadlift isn't the best. Well, really for building muscle, right? It's obviously going to build muscle, but it may not be the most optimal in terms of like those three things. And I think we, as coaches, obviously would also understand what we mean by that. Not necessarily saying that those things are bad, but for majority of people, bench press probably isn't the best way to grow their chest or something like that. What do you think about, I guess, the kind of almost like an infiltration of optimal training? It seems to be all over the internet now. Yeah.
So I think like, I don't want to say like squat, bench, and deadlift is not like an optimum, but I would say like, depending on the individual. So, like I said, I used to be that on the side of like, oh, you have to do those things in order to achieve results, right? But I think now, obviously, I'm very much in the middle where I think it's like when you're trying to put together a program and you help someone to maximize their, muscle gains or whatever, right? I try to look at like, okay, I have a toolbox here. And toolbox, depending on this person's build and also their structure, their experience, and also their ability to like push through pain. I think that's very important. Basically, your ability to like push to a certain level of intensity, right? Then we can then decide, okay, cool, what tools to put together for this job. So picking the right tool for the right job for this specific individual for this particular goal. So what I mean by that is, let's say, I'll use myself as an example. You know how I said that I love deadlift. Obviously, you can see, I always only post deadlift videos, right? But because of my structure, I can lift in a very, very efficient position. I got long arms, and my femur is not too long in relation to my torso. So the distance that I have to lift is actually quite short. So which means, let's say, if I want to always use that as a movement for like hypertrophy programming, what's end up happening is that I would have to lift a decent amount of load. We're probably taxing my nervous system too much for not getting the return as good as, let's say, if you use like a Romanian deadlift or stiff leg, give me a better range for the target muscle, but also not taxing my nervous system as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's hack squat versus a high bar squat sort of argument again. It's once again, you're trying to grow your quads. You're probably going to find that you'll be able to push a lot harder and more directly stimulate the muscle with a hack squat if you were talking about quads, whereas a high bar squat, obviously there's a lot more involved and you're just going to cook yourself and your central nervous system. Not everyone can do maybe like what Ronnie Coleman did back in the day, or he would obviously, he was a lot of barbell squats and stuff like that, but there's very, like you said, the population for people is probably going to be a lot smaller that can push to an incredibly hard set of 9 or 10 on a high bar squat, where there's going to be more people that can probably do that on a hack squat and stay, and obviously the technique can stay better.
And but then again, there's also like some people actually enjoy doing those things, right? If you can enjoy doing those, like, so that's not to say like, do bench press, you won't grow chest. Obviously you can, or if you squat, you can't grow quads. Of course you can with the correct positioning, right? But it comes down to like, whether you actually enjoy doing those things. If you see progression, you like to see that, okay, pushing myself in the gym with those movements, that's awesome, So I think when it comes to that, choosing the optimal movement, like you were saying with the optimal exercises or whatnot, I think it's probably less about that, but more so because at the end of the day, it comes down to like what I think is really important is a person's ability to actually push hard in the gym. This is where I think a lot of bodybuilders can probably learn a lot more from someone like powerlifters, where you actually understand what pushing to the limits feels like, and then you can apply that. Because if you can't actually push into those limits, then it doesn't matter what exercise you choose anyway. It probably doesn't matter that much at the end of the day, But then if you're talking about like, say, someone that's very, very specific, like very advanced at a certain level with their strength across the board, whatever, and also depending on their structure and whatnot, then you can say, okay, cool, we can be a little bit more specific with our exercise selection, so that way we can achieve two things, allow you to make that progression over time, but also prevent injury. So that's where I would make the call on what's optimal or not, rather than like not so much from that biomechanic standpoint. There's still certain exercise. I'm sure what you're saying about like the lat pull down and things like that, which obviously we see a lot of too. Like I still implement those exercises for people in the certain amount of in a certain style programming, but for the most part, it just comes down to like what kind of program can actually allow this particular person to get the outcome that we want. So then there's also that argument about like, okay, cool, high intensity, or you do need to do more volume, or which one can grow muscle fast and things like that, right? And there's always like, the two camps of people that, you just got to do more volume, and you got to do like, you can only do 1 or 2 sets or whatever. I think my approach to that, it depends on the individual. Like for myself, I'm definitely more on the low volume, high intensity side of things, just because like I'll give you an example, right? How many times have you seen your client, they say you're training a client, right? You're pushing them through a set of leg press, and then they say, oh, I'm done, but there's 20 reps there still. So what does that tell you? That this person, their ability to perceive what intensity is, like they think they're at the failure, but there's still 20 reps there, even with good form. So when it comes to individuals like that, if I'm only giving this person 2 exercises on a program, two sets per exercise or 1 set per exercise, they think they're hitting failure, but there's 20 reps there. So that means this program is probably not very effective, right? Because you're not actually achieving that outcome that you want, which is obviously when the volume is lower, likely, your intensity should be higher, right? Whereas on the other side, if you're doing a lot more volume of work, your intensity relatively should be lower. So this particular person will probably be more suitable with the program that's giving that 3, 4, 5, even 6 sets per exercise. For them to get maybe by set 5 or 6, now they're actually getting closer to that effective volume. Then those work actually counts. So, I mean, that's kind of like so that's where I would say like what's optimal. It's like, obviously there's so many things that we can pick from, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to this particular person, and then putting like I said, choosing the right tool for the right job.
I agree with everything you said, man. I look at it the exact same way. To me, it's like the exact way you put it. It's almost like there's like a, like a graph, like where they have it, and it's like
It's an inverse relationship, right? So
yeah, it's like the more
with intensity and volume.
Yeah, the more intensity that they can have, the less
Yeah.
volume that they need, and because there's a lot of that on Instagram and stuff now. There's like a couple of people I follow. One particular guy I'm thinking of, and he sometimes he'll post workouts, and people be in the oh my god, how can you only do 2 sets of 10 on incline chest press and stuff like that? And he's like, well, look how hard I'm pushing. You know what I mean? Like, and that doesn't even necessarily mean it works for everyone. Some people are going to respond to different amounts. I'm similar to yourself, which it took me a long time to realize. I'm never going to be a competitive bodybuilder, but like in terms of like squatting, for example, I can just go really hard with one set. I really, really prefer to just give everything into one set, sometimes even a second one. But like I've done a lot of 4 times 10, 5 times 10 sort of work on various exercises. And I just hit walls quicker and I just end up kind of not enjoying what I'm doing as much, where for some reason I can absolutely just push a much higher level on just 1 or 2 sets.
Yes.
And it is rare, I'm finding but once again, another thing you mentioned about powerlifting, because I came from that kind of background first, I was never the strongest powerlifter, but I was always willing to
push the limits, right?
Yeah, really get through sets where people were like, man, that looked uncomfortable. And I was like, yeah, well.
So in that case, let's say, okay, if you were to do a set, okay, we're going to do like a couple reps in reserve. Like what it really should be is probably you should do like maybe 8 reps, but in your mind, okay, I can do 10 and then still have 2 more. So in that now, if you're then doing really a lot more volume work with that, you probably have a high risk of hurting yourself or not being able to actually then progress through the program. That's probably going to do more. That's probably going to be a lot less optimal than actually be too specific about like, you can only do this much work, you have to do this certain amount of exercise and things like that.
Yeah, well, and then you can also gas yourself as well. I've found myself doing that where I'd go into, I'm going to do more volume. There's a lot more food coming in, right, stuff like that, and then I'm on the second exercise. I just want to go home. You know what I mean? It's just, and same thing, exercise selection too. It was a big thing that plays into what we're talking about here. You got 4 exercises versus 7. There's a big difference there. In terms of like I can put a lot more into those 4 exercises and I can push those limits. Maybe the third one will start to suffer from however I went hard on the first and the second, and the fourth one will probably get that little bit more. But if I try to do 7 of that, it's always that relative thing again. And like you said, it's all just that context, because trying to blatantly say this or this way is the way to train just contradicts the other side of it. So it's good to, I think it's good to talk about an outline, because, I brought it up with Jake because on YouTube now, Mike Mence is getting really popular again, right? All of his stuff's coming back into like the algorithm, if you will. So then you've got these kids who are like 18 who don't train that hard anyway. Who are like, but Mike Mence said I just need to do 1 or 2 sets and then I can have 3 days off if I'm sore. Like, but you probably shouldn't be doing that, because you're at a stage where you don't even understand the intensity. At the moment, four sets or something might be what you need to do. And then when you learn, after you've been training for a couple of years, then you'll realize, and then that's when you can kind of, like we said, the graph. So it's an interesting concept, and I guess that's where we can kind of feed it into the genetic side of things, because genetics is a huge conversation now in this world. Powerlifting, it's insane. I cannot open my phone without seeing like a 17-year-old kid squat 300 kilos or something. And bodybuilding now is insane. And so for me, I guess, not that we can really talk percentages here, but maybe you could elaborate on a little bit on how much you have experienced the genetic potential of others and how much it truly impacts bodybuilding and maybe even just strength in general. Because I believe that, as you said before, it's important to still not be delusional, but a lot of people, obviously, as you know, right, they see a big muscly guy, well, it's because he's on gear, and then people go, but he trains really hard, and then he eats a lot, and all those things matter, but sometimes that person can just do something that no one else can do.
Well, let's use Ray, for example, right? Obviously his genetics, like, it's great, especially for powerlifting, right? So he can like not train or even not do anything for a long time and come in and like, you know, like how you were saying, like I was always trying to compete with him, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, if I can keep up with this guy, my training will go to the next level just by trying to keep up with this guy, right? But then you see, I'll consider myself as like, okay, genetics, you know, maybe good in certain things. But then once you start taking it serious, you can see the gap just gets further and further, and you can't even catch that. And I guess, so that's in a powerlifting sense, right? Some guys' just ability to like, I think mindset as well, ability to handle the pressure, handle the heavy weights, you know, stay calm in those, you know, during those lifts, in those positions. And obviously, you know, and actually their body's ability to like tolerate that level of intensity through the training program, things like that. And actually, you know, get strong over time. So, now in a bodybuilding sense, right? So that, obviously, you know, that's kind of like the sport that I participate in, and also the people that I coach majority of. Let's say if you have a narrow shoulder and super wide hips, compared to like someone that's like super wide shoulder and super narrow hips, chances are, let's say everything else is equal, chances are that person with the wide shoulder and narrow waist is gonna do better. Mm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there is that component of that, right? And then I'll give you a perfect example. So this year in April, so my client, Tom McNamara, he's a men's physique client. He actually got his pro card in Australia. He won his pro card in April, completely natural, 100%. And he's only 26 now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you see his photo, you'll know exactly, like, he's muscle bellies, even his face is good looking as well. It's like super unfair, tall, good looking.
Jackpot.
Yeah. And then, you know, wide shoulders, small waist, the way his muscle belly pops and things like that. His ab structure as well, especially that's really, really huge for like men's physique. So he was able to, like, you know, like you were saying, like some guy can take as much gear as they want. If they have a terrible structure, they're probably not gonna beat this guy. If at the same time he's also putting just as much work as you. So that's the genetic side of things, right? So like and I actually said this thing, and I said, you know, like, and here, you know, obviously people always ask me, like, when do you want to compete next? I'm like, bro, like, look, I can take all the gear I want, I can train as hard as I want. Obviously, I always trying to train hard, but the reality is, get on stage, I'm never gonna beat you. You know, you better looking. Also, your body's genetically structured better too, and you work just as hard as me. So I know there's a gap there, right? If we were step on to do a men's physique. So that's like, you know, he's someone that I would consider has like elite genetics, and he can take it like as far as he wants to take it. Yeah,
I have to look at some of Tom's photos. Well, I have seen him before for sure. Just I can't bet. Yeah. I mean, in this bit we can put a little photo up anyway, so we can.
You take one look and you know exactly what I mean. So
yeah,
he's like good looking and good body, tall as well. But you know, that's the genetics, right? So, so when it comes to bodybuilding, there's a lot of that, you know. So that's where, like, I guess powerlifting is like, as a sport, you probably can get, because let's say, you know, even if you don't have good genetics, you can be rewarded based on the work that you're putting, as far as, like, you know, the progression that you see, right? Mm. Let's say you find you total 500, slowly get up to 550, 600, whatever, you know. But as a bodybuilder, because you get judged, you know, it's a subjective sport, if you want to call it a sport. A few different people judging based on how you look. And if you don't just have the genetics for it, you probably put in just as much work in the gym and everything else, dieting and things like that, but you're probably not going to get rewarded. Someone with superior genetics can maybe work 20% less than what you do, but the chances are he's probably going to do better than you. Mm. And so there's no, like I was saying, in powerlifting, you can see the progression, even if you don't place, but hey, I just put on 50 kilos on my total. So obviously in bodybuilding, you can look better than last time, but the reality is you're probably not, I feel like it's not going to be as rewarding, if it makes sense. Yeah, it's also what makes it, like, I think, a lot more challenging mentally and physically as well.
Well, there's more happening outside as well, right? You know, powerlifting, It's no secret. Powerlifters can be lazy motherfuckers. They can be real, Cheetos and cheeseburgers and shit like that. And then they go to the gym for 3 hours and rest heaps and then go home. And bodybuilding's 24/7 thing, right? You got to take care of your eating, your sleep, everything. If you're a powerlifter and you do that, then that's usually even better.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there are powerlifters that do it, but bodybuilding is a little bit more. I don't think it would be hard to argue. It's definitely more of a full-time gig. So, like you said, that's obviously where you would notice less reward too, because you've put in all that time just to look a little bit better, and then someone might not think so. And you kind of, it would be psychological, more of a, where powerlifting as well, I think, especially now that it's becoming more popular, there is a side of it where, and not saying that bodybuilding isn't supportive, but powerlifting, it's sort of, there is a lot of like novice comps and stuff too, where it's just like someone could lift 50 kilos and people get around them and stuff, where bodybuilding, at the end of the day, it's a different sport. You don't
but I guess, like, with powerlifting, it's like I think this is where I see the difference is, like, let's say, because with bodybuilding, it's obviously, I think I would say most people, as much as they say they don't compete to win, you kind of compete, you want to place well, right? Like, you will feel better if you do like top 3 or, second, or obviously even better if you win, right? Now, obviously in powerlifting, let's say you do a novice comp or whatever comp, if you do pro roll and stuff, if you only find total 500, I guess you can do pro roll. But the point I'm trying to make is that, like, you're not going to all of a sudden total, if your total is 500, you're not going to all of a sudden go to this comp, total 700. Like, where your limits are. You know what the outcome probably is and your gap between you and other people. Now, in bodybuilding, someone can go through the whole prep, because obviously you don't know how they're going to judge. You think you're obviously going to, what we want to do is make you look as lean as possible, obviously, in super good condition, with good shape and good presentation, whatever, right? So we can tick every single boxes, but depending on how they judge and also who else is showing up, sometimes you can be first, sometimes you can be last. So there's not that, do you get what I'm saying? That, there's, sometimes the expectation cannot be matched with the outcome. Whereas at least powerlifting, okay, I find a total 500, okay, I'm going to try to get 520, 530. Even if you don't place, but that's what you're going to do, right?
You've improved. The standard doesn't vary. It's
Yeah.
Well, it seems like a lot of powerlifting, right? I mean, bodybuilding, it's a lot of it is almost, especially people's first or second comp, right? Some of that's almost kind of doing what you're doing, getting on stage so that they can tell you what you need to fix, right? You know what I mean? Because I know, like, I think Jesse, for example, right? I remember one of the things came back to me. I said, how'd it go? When we were chatting and everything, he said, like glutes or something like that. I need to bring up my
back,
glutes,
his shoulders.
His back and shoulders. But he's got a huge structure. That's one thing to, shout out to Jesse if you haven't seen the guy. It was the first thing I noticed about him when I met him.
Yeah.
He's got such a large bone structure compared to, I was in a room with 3 other people when he was there, and it's like you can even just see he's going to be able to put on more muscle than the guys in this room here. You can just tell by looking at him. He's got more space.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's almost like your first and second, maybe even third comp. Every comp, really, you could be getting told that you need to fix something. But the first and second one, I think when people probably first lean down for that first time is where you really, and you would as a coach would be looking at it, right? You'd be looking at someone leaning down and going, all right, I can already tell where we're lacking. So, and like you said, it's definitely a different standard of things. And could you ever see yourself doing a powerlifting comp then?
I actually did. I have done one in 2015.
You did one, yeah. Where was it?
It was in Brisbane. It was novice in it was really Valhalla.
Okay.
It used to be PTC Brisbane, I think.
Oh, okay.
Back then.
Yeah.
I don't know what's it called now, but so I did do one. Yeah.
What were your numbers? Do you remember?
I think it was 210 squat, maybe. It was 147 and 150 bench and 285 dead.
Yeah, wow.
But that's with the deadlift bar.
Oh, okay. When you train in the gym, are you not using a deadlift bar?
Nah, I usually just I train a stiff bar. Yeah.
So that 310 for 4 was on a stiff bar.
Yeah. Not like the illegal stiff, but like a Aussie barbell
Yeah.
stiff. Yeah, so
That's
there's a
going to
difference there.
be that's going to be enough to get people listening to this.
Yeah, but
impressed.
There's also bumper plates and also the straps. So obviously, you know the difference.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But still, deadlift
It makes
bars,
it
man,
easier.
they're getting pretty insane now. I don't know if you've seen some of the ones out there, but some of them are like noodles now.
Oh,
They're getting bad.
Yeah.
So even when you squat, you ever did knee wraps then, or just
Nah,
sleeves?
no, just sleeves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleeves, yeah.
And just use some regular SBD ones? Or?
It might have been SPDs back then, and
But now, even now?
whatever the Mark Bell,
I use those ones.
yeah, whatever that is.
Yeah,
I had it for. Oh wait, no, A7. Sorry, that's the one I got.
use A7s
yeah,
now.
They're for the last. I had it for like 3 years now. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, with the same one. So
But
they're not like super stiff or anything. So
Well, you would have seen some of the ones now getting real stiff.
yeah, you
right?
got to use the plastic bags to put it on,
To
things
get
like
it
that.
on,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's the other thing with the bodybuilding, right? It's funny because that's like the opposite. So if I got some real stiff knee sleeves and they take a bunch out of,
yeah,
it's like that's not really what I want, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like it's going to take too much away from my quad doing the work.
yeah.
Because even bodybuilders using wraps is different. Powerlifters going to be trying to get all they can out of them.
Yeah.
Bodybuilders, you guys generally
Like,
it's use softer ones, right?
yeah. I mean, you know that like if you do your knee reps properly, you can only do 1 rep.
Yeah,
You can't even keep it on for more than 30 seconds, right?
yeah.
So, you use a knee rep, I think it's probably better off just doing, like for bodybuilding anyway, just use like a nice pair of knee sleeves and you're good.
Yeah. Well, that's
you probably getting the same, you're not getting that stiff where, like what you guys do in a competition. So,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't compete much, man, but I did compete in wraps, and it was enough for me to go like one and done. I'm all good. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
But I prefer sleeves. But just once again, even just for convenience, I just didn't like having to spend so much time in the gym and just getting tired from it as well. And so I use them on a pendulum squat now. So that's the other thing I was going to bring up. Obviously, we were talking about hack squats, and I know that you do hack squats as well. Do you ever do anything bare knees, or do you just use sleeves for that sort of stuff?
I always wear sneaks. I probably can do it without it, but I just have like a couple of torn meniscus, so it clicks really bad. I just got into the habit of wearing knee sleeves. Yeah.
Was that an injury from something?
Yeah, in 2015. Yeah.
Did it come from just training, or?
Yeah, training. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was one training. Yeah.
There seems to be a little bit of a common thing with hack squats, right? I was speaking to Jake about it, and I've spoken to a couple other people about it. I think Luke, as another guy that was saying that, and the guys that did heavy hack squats, apparently a few of them have said that, like they've all got kind of their knees are a bit rough from just going real heavy.
I think the ones they're talking about because it's I don't know if you tried it, the side backs, the side backs hack squat.
I don't know. The ones I've used are typically at Golds. I don't know what kind of one they have there.
Probably Matrix, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but the Cybex one that Jake is referring to is, it's probably the heaviest you'll feel. I think the angle and the way you set up, it's like really, so especially, because I try to put my feet as low as possible, like the bottom position, so get as much with the lifter as well, so get as much knee flexion as possible. So like when it comes to that, I can probably only run like maybe a couple months of that movement, and I gotta swap to something else.
Yeah. Otherwise, your knees start to really.
Yeah. Play out a little bit. Because I think just that bottom position and the way it's coming down, and when it gets pretty heavy, like, you definitely feel your knees a little bit. So,
What about a pendulum squat? Do you guys have one?
I tried one in Riderwear gym. So they have one, it's like a Panada brand, which I think the loading is like, so you can definitely use a lot heavier, put more plates on those ones than probably the ones you have at the gym. Those ones are pretty good. Yeah, you can definitely get like, just because the way it's designed, you can basically push you into that maximum knee flexion, right? Drive your knees forward. So, I think those are probably the best for like quad movement, I would say. A good hack squat or a good pendulum squat. Yeah.
So what do you think about things like tempo? You spoke before about Romanian deadlifts with pauses.
Yeah.
So a lot of your, those movements typically, like if we're talking about, say, like your bilateral movement, you're going to pick a pendulum squat and a Romanian.
Yeah.
You always going to implement tempos for clients?
No. So the way I look at tempo, especially the way I mean, even myself, I'll always say this to clients. It's like, find a cadence that you can lift with that allows you to be stable in that position. That's all I care about. Like, I don't need you to, like, unless on the program I said, oh, you got to pause in the short position or long position, whatever. Unless the program says you gotta slow down 3 seconds or whatever, or pause for two seconds. For the most part, just control the weight in a cadence that you feel comfortable with, and you can feel stable through the exercises. That's all I care about. I don't need you to like purposely slow down, because some people do lift slower than the others, and for the most part, I try not to like force them to lift in a different way. As long as you're stable throughout the whole movement, that's all I care about. Yeah, so you can execute the movement well, you know. Just like you always see, some guy can do like on the eccentric can be super slow, but some guy will like probably dive bomb it, right? It's like Ray probably lift very fast, but some of the guys need to like slow down a lot, you know. So there's a different way of lifting. But if you're trying to change it for the person, it probably, first of all, probably would take a long time to actually reprogram that. But also, if it's not stopping them from progressing and also preventing injury, then I don't need to change it, you know. Yeah.
So yeah, it comes down to that similar thing of just matching it to the person.
Yeah.
So I guess we mentioned a little bit before about genetics. We talked about obviously bodybuilding top level and mentioned enhancement, right? Natural potential, I think, is always going to be a huge discussion, right, in the industry, because everybody wants to know how big they can get without having to use drugs. Yeah. And it's always hard to really tell, because once again, like you said, there's going to be people with genetic potential, maybe like Tom that you mentioned, and then there'll be people go, oh, I don't believe he's not on drugs because of how good he looks, right? Exactly, and so Aaron was someone I spoke to. Familiar with Aaron Curtis?
Yeah.
Aaron's a person I spoke, and he's
another OG.
Well, he's another one that straight for years, right? Oh no, there's no way you have to be on drugs because of how good you look, right? Yeah. So, I in your opinion, like, where do you think those lines kind of are for people, and do you think that it's mostly just comes down to the fact that it's a mix? It's just really a mix between people that aren't willing to work hard enough, and then people that essentially don't have large genetic natural potential, right?
Yeah, I think like especially this this day and age, you know, with the social media and everything like that, you know, you probably see a lot of you know, especially with younger guys or girls, they see a lot of influence or whatever. Oh, I want to look at that. That means I got to do this and that, right? So without actually exploring their own, like you said, natural potential, it's really tough, because I think my opinion is that like people probably already made up their mind anyway. So as much as you want to convince them, whatever, like you said, right? Some people just look at that and say, "Oh, that can't be natural," you know. So you're probably not gonna change this person's opinion anyway. So this person just gonna think, "I gotta do this and that in order to look like that," but then they'll soon find out, "Oh, that's probably not it." But then they'll just say, "Oh, maybe I need to do more. That's why I don't look like that." Then, you know. So, but I mean, at least when it comes to my own clients and things like that, especially with younger guys and girls, and I do get asked quite often. It's a very tough conversation, but I always try to, because again, I'll always said that, you know, I'll give you my opinion on what I think and what I think you should do. Sorry, on what I think, but it's up to you to make that decision of what you want, as long as you understand the decision that you're making and the consequences, the potential consequences that comes with that, right? But if the person hasn't got to that level where I think they can achieve naturally, I always tell them, well, let's use Jesse, for example. I'm sure you guys probably had conversation about that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always told him, I think you can do a lot more. I think you can do a lot better, like, before you even consider that. So, so younger guys and girls, but then, you know, like I say, you know, they also see like these influencers that, you know, because if they see this person making a lot of money doing that, who am I to say that you can't try to pursue that, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a moral like side of it, and also, you know, obviously, you know, your personal opinion on that as well. So yeah, but at least for me, when I've been approached or asked about those things, I always give my honest opinion and say, if you haven't yet, if you don't even know what training hard is, I don't even think you need to worry about that, because the reality is you probably won't last long anyway, even if you decided to go down that route. Because if you haven't trained hard enough, if you haven't actually done a successful contest prep, naturally or like actually push yourself to that extreme level of conditioning, then I would say, it's probably too quick for you to take the next jump. Because now you're throwing more things into the mix that affects you physically and mentally as well. So if you haven't got what it takes, you haven't got the work ethic and things like that to even do it naturally, then what's the point of taking it to the next level,
Yeah. No, it's a good outlook. I mean, mine just stays the same. I get to turn that mic a little bit more towards
sorry.
it. Oh, you're right. My opinion stands on it with where I think most people's is, this is when you're doing a competitive sport or something like that, makes more sense. But for me, I think it's more just an abundance between average day. Like you said, just, some people aren't even competing, and I just have friends and stuff who are just on like TRT, and like some of them like don't even train much and stuff. And I think it's just becoming a little bit more common. And so I kind of based what I do more so around the natural side of things, but not because I have any issue with enhancement. I think it's fine. It just needs to make sense, right? You need to be doing it for some kind of reason. Otherwise, it's like we should. Otherwise, by that logic, we should all just jump on. Right? Every single person should be on just so you can feel better or recover better or whatever. Yeah. And like you said, there's obviously a lot more side effects. Imagine if we all jumped on, and then imagine if we sat there and recorded the amount of people that then became sterile or had all these different side effects. No, so for me, like you said, you need to be willing to be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing it for. And I think now we're seeing it. You were at the Olympia. It's obviously at a level now where people are probably some people have obviously taken it too far, right? We've lost a lot of people through it. And then that creates bad examples as well. So once again, I think the outlook is pretty much the same as the general consensus from people that can look at us, at least from a coaching perspective. Because once again, you care about the health of your clients, right? If you think if someone's got like a severe like mental health problems,
that's the biggest thing.
You're probably going to be like, hey, this might not be the best thing for you. Especially if they're already incredibly critical of themselves. As you know, obviously you bodybuilder. I've never been one, but you're never really 100% happy, right? You're always like, oh, I want bigger shoulders, or So it's an interesting thing to explore. But in terms of your coaching, I guess, as we kind of reach the end, a way to kind of summarize it, like what's the goal with yourself? You're starting a family, but business isn't a huge thing for you. Is there some, I guess, lifetime kind of goals you have with the coaching? You've taken someone to the Olympia now, which kind of seems like the pinnacle. But is there like a place where in 5 years you're like, I want to do this?
Yeah. So I think, that's actually something that I think about a lot. So for the business side of things, I think there's a lot of things I can do better. Like I'm sure, we talk about that. But for the next 5 years, I can definitely see just me being more efficient with managing, and putting more into like the business side as well, rather than just focusing on coaching. And obviously, because I probably haven't had to focus too much about that as far as like, putting out content and things like that to try and drive, more traffic and things like, and that sort of stuff. So that should be something that I actually look into. I mean, for coaching side, obviously now with the bodybuilders, I would definitely love to take more clients, to that level again. Obviously, helping more clients to achieve their goals and whatnot. But I mean, I don't really have like a specific like numbers or objectives or whatever. But I just want to, because I really do enjoy what I do. So just being able to like make a living of doing that, I think that's awesome. Now, hopefully I can just sustain that for the next few years, and whatever that comes along the way, maybe different opportunities that's, comes through that, and hopefully we can look into those things too. But for now, just focusing on coaching and get the clients the best possible results and see whatever that comes.
And you think content is like, that is something you would actually like to do?
For business, probably should be what I do. Like even my wife was saying like, oh, you went all the way there, but like you went all the way to Orlando. It's like this huge thing, but you don't even post about it. I was like, yeah, you're right. I probably should do more posts about it. But I don't know. It's just not something that I'm good at, or I feel like it's worth my time. I'd rather just spend on coaching anyway. But obviously, as you know, these days, you know, you kind of have to do both. So that's definitely something that I'll look into, and potentially even get some help from. So
well, that's where you could possibly even just, and you know, I've done it as well. You just kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, like get some finances and go like, all right, this is to a person, and then that person can kind of just follow you, and that way you can just keep on doing what you're doing. Because I think a lot of people say, similar to yourself, it's like when you're in the zone, you're coaching, you're just trying to focus on that. It'd be a lot easier to just have someone else with a camera. They can just follow you, edit everything. You don't have to do any of that. Because obviously, like you said, it doesn't come natural to you. If it was going to come natural to you, you would have done it by now.
Yeah.
So,
and to be fair, I'm probably been pretty lazy with that too. Just focus on things I enjoy doing and not so much on the things that I don't enjoy doing. So
also, like you said, you know, you've started a family, man. That's a big thing too. You got to have that balance. You know, people who are generally, I'm bad with it, man. I don't have kids, nothing. So, but you don't want to get. It's very bodybuilding in itself, as well, selfish, right? It can be a very selfish sport. If you're coaching people, you got your own training, family. You don't want to be spending even more time on your phone doing videos and stuff. It's definitely about a balance, right? It's
I mean, that's definitely tough with like bodybuilders, right? I'm sure you probably talked to Jake about it.
Yeah.
You know, you make, you can become very isolated and because it's a very selfish sport. Like when you're trying to pursue this goal, you know, especially when you're hungry and you don't have energy, you don't feel like socializing and things like that. But you know, I'll always say to my clients, and this thing comes up a lot because a lot of people kind of like lose their relationship or have issues with their friends or things like that happen, or lose their job through prep. And I always said that, you know, because everyone else, you are the exact same person. So they just gonna see you as like, oh, why are you so grumpy all the time? Why don't you want to, like, you know, are you okay? Like, it's just always, obviously to you, it's like, oh, you know, just leave me alone, you know? So it's like, you kind of have to make that extra, just make sure that you actually, you know, prioritize, you know, your loved ones and your friends and things like that, you know? Especially, like, I always say to clients, like, especially when they're fresh into a relationship and trying to go through prep, especially the person doesn't understand what you do, I always say, make sure you prioritize. Like, communicate with your boyfriend or girlfriend about what you're doing. Make sure each week you spend time or set time aside to spend time with them. Otherwise, because like I said, you know, they just see you going from this person to the other side, like to the extreme. But whereas to you, it's like, oh, I'm the same person. I'm just trying to do this bodybuilding thing. And that's where you can cause problems, right? And especially when you're hungry, you know, you can get more irritable and things like that. So that makes the arguments and things like that even worse. So,
and you can't just. I don't know if you ever saw the old Australian ads, but that when they say you're not yourself when you're hungry, and then people would eat
that's
it.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true.
But because you're peppering it, you can't have a Snickers.
Yeah.
Right. Even when you do finally eat, it's probably, you know, something fairly bland, or especially if you're close. Like the last couple of weeks of comp, it just sounds horrendous. You know. Yeah. Jake mentioned that, right? He just lost interest in everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've obviously leaned down to that state before, so not everybody understands that last 10 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. So it's like your family and friends, they're just like, what's wrong with you, right? You all of a sudden become this asshole. But you're not trying to be an asshole, you know, that's just how you feel, you know? So I think it's important that definitely for most people to communicate that across, and also take that into consideration before even trying to do like a prep and stuff. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Well, look, before we go, I always like to kind of find out a little bit more about someone with a couple speed rounds, right? So these are just kind of like quick answer questions.
Yeah.
If you got something for me. You like to lift with intensity, right? I like to do the same thing. And so for me, music plays a pretty big part in that. So do you have, I guess, what you could consider like a PR song? Do you have like yeah, you do?
There's only one song.
There's only one. Oh, okay. He's got his phone and everything ready.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's called, I don't even know who the band is, to be honest with you. It's just on my list. It just gets me every time.
I'm excited to.
Have you heard of this one? Oh wait, I shouldn't play, but I think the band is this one.
Oh, you are we while
Yeah.
she sleeps. Yeah, while she sleeps, they played in Perth a little while ago.
Yeah. I don't even know how I got onto this song, but that's the only song I play.
Really?
Yeah, for like the last 3 years, I'll say.
Wow. So heavy metal then. That's good. Yeah. So not many people like heavy metal's like bodybuilding. Sometimes there's a lot of like, hard style and all that sort of stuff like that. Heavy metal's my thing as well. So that's I've not heard that song though.
Try.
Next time I go for my PR, I'm going to chuck it on. Awesome.
Yeah.
You've obviously been a coach for quite some time, but you obviously train a lot yourself, and sometimes you train with people. But if you could train with one person, for a session, you could train with anyone. They could be alive or dead or anyone. If you could do one session with someone, who would it be?
Probably Dorian Yates, I'll say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be over quick though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I actually saw him in the gym in Orlando. He was giving like a camp, like a training camp and stuff.
Oh, wow.
I should have got a photo with him, but I didn't. But yeah, that would be someone like, not now, but like when he was full on right into his bodybuilding. I would love to train with that. Yeah.
Did you talk to him when you were there though?
No, he was like busy working and stuff. So yeah.
Wow. That would be crazy, man. I don't think his training was on a whole nother.
Yeah.
Crazier than Ronnie's. It just looked insane.
Yeah.
If you bodybuilding, you get attached to foods. Is there like a number one go-to for you? Like if it comes down to like your favorite meal, like is there like a...
See, it changes, right? So when I'm dieting, for whatever reason, I just always crave like pork ribs. Like a full rack of pork ribs.
Okay.
Every time. So that's why every time post come, we always go to a barbecue place, like some sort of barbecue. Yeah. But now, I just get like a really nice steak. I'm good.
Okay, so you're a meat guy. You like
yeah.
Good meat
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I guess this one is going to be like the last way to top it off. It's always hard to phrase it. I don't want you to think about balance. You're a bodybuilder, so you're going to be thinking straight away about symmetry. But just for enjoyment, right? If you could only do 2 exercises for the rest of your life, you could only pick 2. Say it could be upper and lower, or both lower, both upper. What would you choose?
Well, definitely deadlift, just because that's one thing I'm good at, and probably like now I'm thinking about like upper, but I'll say if it's not, just probably some sort of squat and deadlift. Yeah,
they're just the ones you enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, lastly, I guess this is not really speed round stuff, but this is something that's in my head, because I like to think that there's a lot of people listening, and I learnt from a lot of people. You learnt from a lot of people. If someone was starting out, let's say a 17-year-old kid's listening to this, he's just started in the gym. What is like a way for you to go, I guess, kind of summarize some advice in what you would give someone, right? When it's a 17-year-old kid who's walked to the gym, he's skinny, wants to get bigger and wants to be stronger. What's some sort of solid advice you could give to him if you only had a minute to do so?
Honestly, the only advice I'll give, just learn how to train properly. Learn how to train hard and learn how to train properly. What I mean by that is obviously find someone that can teach you proper technique, and then just go hard in the gym. Try to chase numbers. Write down your numbers. Go hard each gym, like each week, to try and progress. That's probably the quickest way you'll find results.
You track everything.
Well, I know that's not for everyone as well. Obviously, sometimes you just want to go in and do whatever you do. But I would say, if you're someone that's getting into the gym, you just want to get jacked, you're super skinny, learn how to train properly and learn how to train hard and track the progression. I think you'll see way more results than even trying to worry about. Like, obviously, diets are important too. But I would say if you learn to do that, even if your diet is like average, you get so much better results compared to if you like perfect diet, perfect down to the grain of like specific macros or whatever, which obviously a lot of people do these days. But if your training is not on point, you're probably not going to see much of a change.
I would say that's pretty solid advice. That would have helped me when I was 18 for sure. Man, look, thank you for coming here. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah.
Man, I look forward to talking again one day and you telling me that you have a client that just won the Olympia, because I'm sure it'll happen. It'll happen. Are you highly regarded when I sort of announced that you were going to be on? And that's much as what I said with Richard. You got a good reputation, man. Absolutely. And that's a good thing to have. For someone who doesn't take business too seriously, people take you seriously. So that matters, right? But look, I always go, just before I go, I always make a couple of mentions. Is there anyone you'd like to mention before you go?
In what sense? Like,
just like if you were to shout out anyone before you go. I always shout out sponsors and like family members or something like that. Do you have anything that you would like to?
shout out the
Thirst Trap. We're going to remix the shit out of that now. Yeah, there we go.
No, I'll probably say, like, I was saying, because obviously it was just on my mind for now. How I got started, how I was given the opportunity by a good friend, Jim McKillop from Flex Success. So he was definitely a huge mentor for me, and giving me the opportunity to get into the industry of coaching and stuff. So yeah, I would say that's about one person as far as the business side of things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take this time to shout out Achievement Apex and Power Pit Rockingham, also Maggie, who's here, doing all this amazing filming for every single podcast so far. So shout out to all of those guys, as well as Thirst Trap. And as always, a shout out to my mother.